And now we return to our regularly scheduled SchmoeTalks episode with our review of Free for All 3. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, and now we are at almost the halfway point of the video as we go ahead and get into Free for All number 3. Now, this one was the first real big step in evolution for the Free for Alls. They took it out of the studios and to a live setting. So this was the first one where, after they'd gotten their live events off the ground, a big mass crowd was there to watch this live. And I don't have a big mass crowd watching this, but I do have 3 more brand new panelists here joining me to talk about it. Let's go ahead and bring them in. So, introducing first, he is a returning member to SchmoeTalks. He is a member of the TMG family, and he is the host of another Schmoedown show you might know by the name of Mount Schmoedown. He was also live in attendance of this free-for-all, which makes it even better that he is here. He is Mr. Ryan Payne coming on screen now. Ryan, how's it going, man?
It's going really good, actually. It's been a really long time since I was on here with you for SchmoeTalks in a while.
Yeah,
I've lost track, honestly. The last couple of months have literally flew by like in a blink. Like I literally go to bed, season 8 starts, and then all of a sudden we're already talking about the free-for-all.
Honestly, it feels that way, man. When I realized that I've been doing this for going on 5 months now, it is insane to think it's been that long. So let's go ahead and bring on some other guests that have been on the show previously in those 5 months. Entering next, he is a member of the Fan League community, and he is a returning guest here on SchmoeTalks. He is Mr. Jacob Barber, joining us on screen as well. Jacob, how's it going?
It's going well. It's a beautiful day here, so I have no complaints.
Awesome. And finally joining us on panel, another returning guest here on SchmoeTalks, as my light has a seizure in the background. He is someone who has guested on the show. He has also guested on another podcast on this channel, After Dark. He is Mr. Jordan Anderson, joining us on screen. Jordan, how is it going?
It's going good. I'm excited to talk about this. This is my favorite free-for-all out of anyone that's ever happened, so I'm excited to get into it and talk about it. So
I can't help but stare at it myself. I apologize if anyone has epilepsy. I'll put a warning and have you skip this. I really don't know what is happening behind me. My lights decided mid-recording to give out. So let's go ahead.
It would not bother me. That'll probably put me to sleep.
Let's go ahead
Kinda
and
hypnotic.
get into this, guys. So just like with the other free-for-alls, we have our players, we have the best performers. We've already kind of gone over the rest of it, and this one is a rather interesting free-for-all because we have a couple of really heavy hitters at the start, and then there's just a long period of nothingness, and then we get some heavy hitters in at the end. So let's talk about the ones that entered at the start. We have, of course, as he was known because of this free-for-all, Mr. Free-for-all, the MVP himself, William Bibiani. After his performance that we talked about in Free-for-all 2, he enters first this time around. He stays on the table till the 39th position, second to last person eliminated, lasting 30 rounds and scoring the all-time high total of 106 points. He was joined on that initial table by Mr. Brendan Meyer, who entered fourth. He's eliminated 21st, lasting 12 rounds for a total of 38 points. And Miss Rachel Cushing, who entered fifth. She was eliminated 12th after lasting 8 rounds for a points total of 30. So let's go ahead and get into this, guys. Jacob, I will head to you first. What were your kind of thoughts of the initial opening rounds and these players' performances?
So for me personally, I didn't know much about Brendan, at the time because I'm not big into the Schmoedown at the time, but I watched it because it was entertaining and I like trivia. So for me, like that was the one I was like, maybe he'll last a couple rounds. And he'll, score 3 points here and there, and then he'll be gone. And I was wrong completely, obviously. And he's totally surprised me. William Bibiani didn't really surprise me up until like rounds 25 to 30. I'm like, maybe this is when he's gonna go out. And then no, like he just did William Bibiani things and stood up the whole time.
Yeah, that's the exhausting part, is standing on that stage under giant bright floodlights.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. Like I wouldn't last 30 rounds, but 3 rounds I would be like, I'm gonna get my chair.
Even that,
Right.
even during that time, oh my God, the standing, they had that break, and he was still standing throughout the entire break too. So he was committed to not sitting down until it was over.
The entire time. Crazy.
Yeah, Ryan, I'll go to you next. What were your kind of initial thoughts on these opening competitors in the opening rounds?
Well, to be honest, like with most people in the attendance, we were kind of surprised he was number one, honestly. I mean, of course, looking at it now, at least now with Bibiani the way he is, everyone sees it as a huge monumental feat that he was able to accomplish. But to all of us in the attendance, we were shocked he was number one. We didn't think he'd go all the way. We thought maybe he'd get eliminated halfway or something would happen, honestly. We thought it was a big risk, a big gamble. Because even then at the second free-for-all, he came in after the halfway point and lasted that long being the MVP. So there was a lot of pressure on him. But the way he came out, too, and the fact he came out to Prince's song Party Man and had – I believe it was a Copster with that boombox pretending Bob, him throwing around fake money across. Like, he just came to have fun. So it didn't help really alleviate so much tension that some of the fans were feeling. Although, obviously, to mimic Jacob as well, with Brendan, it was unknown as well. Some people were glad to see. He was, at least with the first 5, he was the more unknown because, of course, other than him, Rachel, and Bibiani, there was also Rachel Silvestrini and Jonathan Harris, and a lot more people were more happy to see Rachel and Jonathan than they were Brendan. But I'll be honest, the biggest pop, obviously, next to Bibiani was when Rachel came out, her walking down that aisle with both those belts. Everybody, most people really thought that she was going to be the heavy hitter next to Bibiani. But when she got eliminated, that heartbreak hurt. That heartbreak hurt so bad.
I can only imagine, man. And then, Jordan, I'll go to you last before we move on. What were your kind of thoughts on some of those opening rounds?
Well, can I just say that I missed these times in the Schmoedown? Like, I missed the times when the Schmoedown just didn't give an F about copyrighted music, and they could come into this, like, all these cool tracks and songs from all over the place. Like that was a lot of fun. And for me, I think this is the moment that Brendan Meyer really became a star in the league for me, because before this, I mean, he had some pretty decent rounds. I mean, or matches. I mean, nothing really too impressive, really, though. But I mean, after this, man, I mean, ever since then, I think that like he's been great in the league, been a star, and then William Bibiani, like I don't know how that man can stand for that long, and kept saying he was talking about his bad knees and everything, with a bad knee being able to stand for that amount of time, and yeah, I was super impressed by just the opening field, and kind of like Ryan said, seeing Rachel come in with the belts. Like I miss Rachel so much in this league. Like I just have this like feeling that maybe one day we'll see her back. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but we can always hope, right? but yeah.
Yeah. Maybe on the desk, obviously.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And then we can go ahead and kind of get on, because then we get this, and it's throughout all the free-for-alls, all 5 free-for-alls. I believe this is the biggest gap of players that just can't hit a run. Nearly 20 players come out before we get another player that really gets on another good, impressive run. And I mean, it was a really interesting mix of players. We saw in this mix of like 20 players, we saw Adam Witt, Jen Kemp, and Paul Preston all make their Schmoedown debuts, very quickly going in and out. We saw hotshot rookies like Paul Oyama and Kevin Smets come in and make their way out very quickly. And we even had a couple of, very competitive Schmoedown legends like Mike Kalinowski, Lon Harris, even John Roca is technically a part of this period of players who kind of very quickly just came and went and never really made an impact on the match. The longest I think of this group was Seibold and Roca, who only lasted 4 rounds apiece. Then we get to the next 2 big hitters, which enter the table after, I believe it was a 4XXXX. Bibiani executes the remainder of the table, including the long-standing Brendan Meyer, and we see 2 competitors enter. We have Mr. Mark Andraco, who comes in, putting up, I believe, his best free-for-all performance. Enters 25th, he leaves 30th, and lasts 8 rounds for 24 points. And joining him, his teammate Jeff Snyder enters 26th, is eliminated 33rd after 11 rounds for a total of 33 points. And just to kind of wrap it all up, because again, it's a very interesting free-for-all where not a lot of heavy hitters. We had 2 at the very end as well come in Mr. Dan Merle, who would go on to win it. He enters 31st and wins it after lasting 13 rounds with 42 points. And of course, JTE makes his 6th epic return to the Schmoedown at this point. He enters 35th. He is eliminated 38th, and even though that's only 3 places, he does last 10 rounds for a total of 28 points. Ryan, I'll go to you first, kind of shifting again, because there's that big gap in the middle. We shift to the back half of this free-for-all where we started getting these hitters again coming in and really making an effort. What were your thoughts on it?
Well, really reliving all of that, it really was insane. The number of people that came in, like obviously, of course, with Brendan and Bib still before that first half, just seeing so many people just pop in, like Seibold, like Oyama, like Smets, even some people who are not like great trivia players, like Winston show up and Zipper show up. Like these guys actually, also one thing I want to point out about this free for all, despite next to the copyright music, it had so many great entrances from these players.
I meant to say, I don't mean to cut you off, but I literally was writing the joke in my head and forgot the punchline. Greg Alba pissed himself in the middle of that long list of people who went out quickly.
And to bounce off of like Jordan's earlier comments about the Schmoedown using copyright music, this was, live, you're hearing that music. It is, of course, the Let the Old Ways Die from the A Star is Born soundtrack. Yep. But once they upload to YouTube, they had to put some generic music over it because of copyright problems. But even then, when you still listen to it, you can still hear Bradley Cooper's voice playing. But it was just one of those situations where Greg, full character, coming out, selling the performance. Of course, seeing a lot of audience, we didn't know what the hell he did when he got up in the front until the left side of the audience saw the water come down his pants. I'm like, wait, what's happening? And then someone's shouting, he's good in his pants! Like that moment broke. Really, it made people on that table laugh. It made all of us laugh. But going back with the 20 people that got eliminated, it really was amazing. Especially, I think, yeah, when Winston came in, this was like after he and Zipper broke up with World's Finest. He comes in with dressing up like Winston Duke from Us. You know, the whole coming out with the "I Got Five on It" song. But most people in the crowd who even saw the trailer or the movie knew exactly what Winston was dressing up like. And then with Eric Zipper, obviously himself, literally coming down the audience, eating a cake in front of everybody, like walking down, just shoving a handful of cake in his mouth to people. Like the fact that first half had so many great memorable moments that is actually I'm gonna say this free for all. Every time the SchmoeDown does like these great montages or these great little edit trailers like by Nerd Chronic, there's always a moment from Free for All 3 in there because it was so monumental. And then knowing the fact that I can see a clip of just having JTE come down with his hands like this, soaking in the applause, the uproar, or with Jeff Snyder. Yeah, or with Jeff Snyder actually recreating Eli Roth, the Bear Jew. God, it's just incredible. But I'm taking too much.
Wasn't this the match where then JTE went and wrote Jew Bear? Wasn't this in the same thing?
Yeah.
And also, I think this was one of the free for alls. We actually had a challenge actually, and it came from Roka. I believe I recall. One of the questions were, what items was being used in? I can't remember what movie, but what was the items being heisted? Roka wrote jewels, and of course Snyder's answer, he had diamonds down, which he got correct. Roka challenged it because he said jewels and diamonds were the same thing, and we had this big pause to where they were trying to figure out what was right. I think he lost the challenge though, but I remember people in the crowd were like really hammering him on that afterwards, especially when he got eliminated.
Yeah. Jordan, I'll go to you. What about the back half of this stands out to you?
So yeah, for me, like so many great entrances. Like that's there's one thing that I got to echo. Just I mean, Greg Alba just absolutely killed me. I mean, especially when he came out from the music from A Star Is Born, and then when he gets eliminated, finally he's like, "Christian, I just want to get another look at you," and then he like walks off. And like, I think that is awesome. He has the like voice down perfect, everything, and then you had a couple cool entrances from even late to the party. You had Vanessa coming in as the little girl from Finding Nemo, the little fish, and then you had Robert Montero coming into the Police Academy music. I love that soundtrack, so that was pretty epic to see him come into that. And then just like some of the questions that these guys missed, like they got stumped again on remember the Titans left side, strong side, like that's just the thing. Like in the SchmoeDown, they just don't know. Remember
I actually broke the chair when that question came up. Oh my god.
Yeah, right. And then just like some of the like more personal things to me, like I'm a huge Goonies fan, but nobody can remember the name of the Fratellis except Rachel. She's the only one that got that one right. And then they had the question about 15, 17 to Paris. They're just throwing out random numbers because I mean, who remembers that off the top of your head, you know? And but yeah, just like even going back to Brendan Meyer, like I just wanted to just mention that like he eliminated some heavy hitters. He eliminated Whitney Seibold, Greg Alba, Rachel Cushing, Alonzo Duralde, and Eric Zipper. So like that was a pretty impressive feat to me. And then just some of these competitors, you know, and we had a long streak where nobody was really lasting super long. I mean, the whole thing about the middle spot, like everyone kept getting eliminated from that.
Yeah, the middle chair,
like the first spot. Yeah, right. So like so many people. Like even some heavy hitters couldn't even last. You had Drew McWeeny, you had Robert Meyer Burnett, a bunch of them in that middle spot that just didn't make it.
Really, Roka, McWeeny, and Kalinowski all had that spot.
Yeah, right. So it's crazy. So, but yeah, but just seeing like the some of those guys that just lasted so long in the second half too. I mean, you had the you had JTE coming back after his infamous bird scooter accident. So that was like you said, like one of his like many turns. But even after that, we didn't see him play in the showdown for a while. He like kind of came for the free for all, and then he left, and now he's back again now currently. But yeah, I mean, and then seeing like Snyder last so long, and then of course Dan Murrell at the very end, he eventually won the whole thing, which is crazy because I mean, I'm sure everyone was pulling hard for Bibbs to win it, but I mean, it just came down to the very end. Like yeah, I mean, it was a tough thing, but yeah, overall, I thought that it was great, and like all these things are just reasons why I just love this free for all. So yeah.
Yeah, and then Jacob, I'll go to you. What were your thoughts on kind of the back half of this free for all?
The back half for me was all about, all right, is this going to be the round where Bibiani gets, eliminated? And it never happened. And I just remember being in awe. Like, this man is a beast. Like, obviously, like, the nickname fits. The entrances were cool. I'll echo Greg Alba. And the fact that he stayed in character the whole time, too. Like, most people will do their entrance and then, all right, now, they're them again. But he stayed in character the whole time, and it was just so much fun to watch. So that part really stands out to me. There was a part of me that thought JTE could pull it out. Honestly, I think, like you said, he was. You said he was third, right?
Yeah, third place finisher. Yes.
He won the last three for this because they tied.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have been surprised if he did pull it out. But when it, you pull for Bibiani, and you can't be upset that Dan Murrell wins because he's Dan Murrell and we all love him. But when Bibiani, like, it just there's that moment of heartbreak for Bibiani, and then there's that moment of celebration for Dan Murrell. So, this free for all really was great.
Yeah, absolutely. And then before we go ahead and I'll send it around one last time, but before we get to that, one of the things, we've done with the other ones, let's get to kind of the prizes. How were the prizes used from this? So obviously they determined at the end, if I remember correctly, Dan Murrell, obviously as a champion, gets his title shot. And that was cashed in later in the year against Corruption. That was the round 3 that was played in Orlando, which I was actually in attendance for, but we'll get to that more in depth when we get to that episode. And then, if I remember correctly, and if one of you is remembering something different, please correct me, but I believe William Bibiani's prize was a #1 contenders match out of this, which he then cashed in singles and entered a triple threat against Roca and Irwin, which he actually won, and then went on to face Dan Murrell one-on-one, which Dan Murrell still won. But he took his chance against it. So I think this is probably, out of all the free-for-alls, in my opinion, I think this is actually the most fair reward that's ever been given out. And this is something I can get into obviously another time. I don't think the reward that was given out for this current free-for-all is the most fair of rewards. But this was probably the most fair in that you won it, you get your title shot, just like we've done before. Sam got it, Brienne got it, you get your title shot. MVP, you get that #1 contender shot. Which is kind of the next best thing, right? It's you played really, really well, so you'll get a chance at a title shot. You still got to win one. And I think that's the most fair result that's ever been given out. I wish they would stick with that. But it is what it is. They made the decision to change it, obviously. And it's not that big a differential, but it is interesting to think about how, and also these are probably the 3 best matches that resulted out of a free-for-all. Because that triple threat was great. The title match that followed was solid between him and Dan. And then that Corruption Founding Fathers match, and again, I speak kind of like with Ryan with this. I speak with someone who was in the room. It was definitely a sight. As I said before when he was on the show a couple weeks ago, as somebody who knows and has nothing but love for Chance, that was an awkward room to be standing in because nobody fucking liked them in that room. They all wanted Founding Fathers to win. So that was a hard room to be in for them, I imagine. But yeah, it was definitely a fun match. They both definitely brought it. So I'll pass it to Jacob one more time. We'll do one more quick round. If there's anything you didn't get to mention or talk about, a moment or something related to the free-for-all that you want to get in before we end this segment, please go ahead.
Yeah, for me, it's the Smets-Kalinowski face-off. I love that moment. Just seeing those two in the middle of the stage, face to face, and then Smets just walks by him and goes to his chair. And if I remember correctly, Kalinowski was the one that eliminated him. If I'm remembering correctly.
I can get you that information.
Well, I mean, Kennedy wasn't scoring that well. He wasn't a singles guy, as he admitted. I think.
Yeah.
So technically, the way they credit it is whoever scores the highest per round is who eliminated you. So technically, he was eliminated by Bibiani. That's how they credit it. But they may have been even in points, and that's what
Yeah, and that's what I meant by that. If I'm remembering correctly, it's been a few days since I've rewatched it, so my memory is not the best. But and after that, I wanted to see these two face off, and we eventually saw that, and we were not disappointed.
Yeah, just don't tell Peter. Ryan, go ahead. Is there one more moment that you had for the free-for-all that you wanted to bring up before we close out? I can't tell if you heard me or.
Well, I mean, just replaying all that in my head. I mean, of course, the one thing I do remember in the back half though was hello.
Yep, you're good. You're
you guys
still there.
hear me?
Yeah. You were still there. Go ahead.
Hello.
Yeah,
I hear you. You're good.
Oh no! Did I just pause?
He probably can't hear us. He probably can't hear us.
We can hear you if you probably can't hear us.
All right, Jordan, I'll go ahead and move on to you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Is there anything last minute you wanted to bring up?
Well, I just kind of think that the prizes, how they do it now, so they got factions now. So I feel like the prizes are a little more geared towards that. They kind of take that into consideration. And it's crazy to me to think how long ago this free-for-all actually was. Like, it was in 2019. We didn't get a free-for-all in 2020. And so when you think of a free-for-all 3, that's the one that came right before this year, but it happened clear back in 2019. So there's just certain things like it's when Paul Preston made his debut. So I feel like he's been in the Schmoedown forever, but that was his debut. I think with Jen Kemp, that's another one. So I mean,
yes.
I just feel like to me, I feel like those guys have been there for quite a while. And really the only other thing is that I do kind of like when they decided to throw a Get Your Geek on it instead of calling it Inner Geekdom. So it kind of threw people off. I remember the first time they threw it out there, Rachel Cushing, she's like, what's that? And I thought they're doing it as a joke. I don't know if that's what they actually called the category, if they were joking. I couldn't really tell, but yeah, so but I mean, basically for me, the standout moment overall, just seeing Dan Murrell win it, because I mean, everyone thought Bibbs was going to take it, and like he made it all the way to the very end, and like I thought that it would have been perfect if he would have taken it, because for me, I'm a huge Gonzaga fan, and we went undefeated this year and lost the championship game, so it's like I bought a shirt that said perfect season, and now I can't wear it anymore because it's not a perfect season. So Bibbs almost had the perfect free fall, and just at the very end. But I mean, I love Dana. I mean, who doesn't? I mean, so I mean, I'm happy to just see his legacy grow, and all the more argument to call him the GOAT. This just is one of those things that just adds to it for me. So
yeah, and then back to Ryan. One last moment quickly before we close out.
First off, can you guys hear me completely? No lag?
Yes.
See.
Okay. Awesome. What I was going to say was that one of the things I loved from the back half was there were, I think, a lot more new people being brought in, or more likely less known singles players. Because I know it was in the back half. I think it was when, both Wit and Preston made their debut. And I know also, we got to see some good, actually some other good entrances, like good costumes out of Stacey Howard, who I think she came dressed up as the dude, and then also Janine Machine coming out dressing up like, I believe, Black Widow. So just knowing that, even though most of the fun was there, both of these feel very equal, like with the first half of the free for all and the second half of it, because this one really felt like they can actually do the free for all live. Like, I really thought that the third one was going to be another studio thing that was going to be like a pay-per-view test on YouTube, but when they said it was live, so many questions went in on whether this could work or not. Have all these audience members here, all these fans. I mean, of course the fans would want to stick around for this, but it was a mixture of the, with the crew setup. I mean, making sure, of course, with the players, wondering if they were going to stay the whole time or they were going to have to, jump in and jump out. Like, almost anything wrong could have happened here. And to be honest, I don't think anything did outside of copyrighted music. Other than that, I thought this was a great free-for-all. And I think, one of the biggest regrets with the free-for-all 4 is that when it was announced, it was going to be, of course, obviously it wasn't going to be live when they announced it, but even then, still knowing that the free-for-all 3 was a great accomplishment live, felt like that should have been like a big staple, but it's Christian, making sure everyone wants to stay safe, so I agree with that. But other than that, I so many memories to take away from this live, from the free-for-all being live. So when free-for-all 5 does happen again, I hope it's live, and I don't care where it's going to be. I'm going to buy tickets just so I can go to it.
Same. Like, free-for-all needs to be live. Like I know we got COVID going on, but this is the event of the year for me. Like, my favorite event, and yeah, just having it live. And yeah, well, you're right. Like, it went off without a hitch live. So if they did it once, I'm sure they can replicate it.
Absolutely. And guys, with that has been Free for All number 3. I want to thank Jacob, Ryan, Jordan for coming on. And as I am treating all my esteemed guests this time around, I'm going to swiftly kick you to the back. So I appreciate everything. Bye-bye, people. And guys, with that, to contradict something that one of our panelists said earlier, there was a free-for-all last year, technically. There was the horror free-for-all, and that's up next. We'll be back in just a minute with And we are back and ready to get into the next free-for-all, the penultimate free-for-all. This is the horror free-for-all. So for anyone who remembers the year that was 2020, because we're sure not going to forget it, I believe quite literally a week before they were supposed to do a regular free-for-all, COVID became a national pandemic and people stopped hanging out with each other. So collectively getting 40 competitors and 1,000 fans into a room was just something that couldn't happen. So by the time they figured out how to do it digitally and got it all back together, they decided to do a specialized horror free-for-all that was aired as a part of Skybound's kind of YouTube horror expo that they did for Halloween. And even though it wasn't quite the same as all the other free-for-alls, it certainly still brought some fun trivia, especially with those deep cuts into horror. And I have a really fun panel this time around to talk about it with me. So let's go ahead and bring them on in. Introducing first to the panel, he is a returning panelist to SchmoeTalks. He is a member of TMG, specifically the commissioner of the TM Geek League over on TMG Trivia. He is Mr. Kevin Poss, joining me on screen. Kevin, how's it going? Welcome back to the show.
How's it going, Aaron? Glad to be back and glad to be talking about this horror free-for-all. This was a fun one.
Absolutely. And up next, joining me on screen, he is one of the recurring panelists on TMG's weekly podcast, After Dark. He is also a returning SchmoeTalks guest. He is one Dr. Spaceman, Alan Shepard, joining me on screen. There we go. How's it going, Alan?
Aloha, everybody. I'm doing good. Glad to be here. Talk about some horror free-for-all. Woohoo!
And third up, he is another returning guest. The last time he joined me, it was as a part of a team guest appearance for the show Mount Schmoedown. It is Mr. Ben Rayner joining us on screen. Ben, how's it going? Let me get that for you.
Good. How are you?
Good. Happy to have you back. And because the shortest free-for-all needs the most guests, I am happy to have someone making their SchmoeTalks debut. He is someone that Ben knows very well. And for those of you who watch the Schmoedown after shows, he is one of the many Canadians on Schmoes of the North. I am joined by Matt Margeau, better known as Soda. Hey, did I butcher your last name? That's the first thing I have to ask.
There's no R in it.
Oh my God. Wow. Say it for me.
Maggio.
Maggio. I got the rest of it right, though.
Think DiMaggio without the D.
There you go.
Understood. Well, there we go. All right, guys. We do this professional. We check before we go on air. But I am joined by these five gentlemen. Matt, thank you so much for coming on the show for the first time.
Thank you very much for having me and actually giving me a reason to watch the horror free-for-all, because that's one of the few things I didn't watch from last season.
There we go. Perfect. So we have some fresh opinions here. So as you guys saw in kind of the build-up leading into this, we have a number of competitors in this free-for-all, 18 competitors, and over half of them did not make it past one single round. So when I say we pulled out the best competitors to talk about, I mean anybody who quite literally made it past one round, because that's kind of what this became. And yeah, it was a very different type of free-for-all, man. These questions got so deep cut so quick that it really did become that type of a competition. So I'll intro some of them. Some of the early performers, we had Mr. Vinny Mancuso, entered third, eliminated third. He lasted 2 rounds and scored 8 points. He was joined on the first table by Paul Preston, who entered fourth, left seventh. He lasted 4 rounds to score 21 points, including playing in a sudden death. And Tim Franco entered fifth. He was eliminated sixth, lasting 3 rounds. He scored 18 points, also having to play through the same sudden death. I'm going to go ahead and start to my right-hand side with Alan. What are your thoughts on some of the early rounds and these guys coming in and trying to find their foot and play some rounds?
I always play along, of course, and I was doing surprisingly well with this one, which was nice. They were pulling some deep cuts, but usually, especially when it's genre specific, the competitors have a deep breadth of knowledge of these things. But this one, yeah, a lot of these guys that didn't last very long, particularly Paul. I was kind of disappointed in Paul because we know Paul. We've hung out with Paul before. And he has a good depth of knowledge of just about everything. But this horror didn't really seem his element that much, just lasting 4 rounds. And with a lot of these guys, they didn't last very long, and they were missing questions. And I thought, oh wow, if you're doing a horror free for all, you should know these. You should know some of these things. So it was interesting to see. They did go deep with the questions, but I think people should have been prepared for that probably a little bit more than they were.
Yeah, certainly. Matt, I'll go to you. What were your thoughts on kind of the opening rounds?
The opening rounds, I was surprised to see who was in it and who didn't make it past the first round. But actually to counter Spaceman's point here, actually I was impressed with Paul because he may have lasted four rounds, but he had the 4th highest score. 21 points. I mean, like he did pretty good on his own. I was surprised he knew so much about horror. A little disappointed that the Barbarian was one of the first ones eliminated, but I mean that's just an early number like that. That's just what's going to happen.
Yeah, and there were a number of people in here that I think people. Yeah, it's weird. It was such a like murder thing, because Craig went out after one round, Lon Harris went out after one round, Paul Oyama went out after one round, Irwin, Snyder, and Draco, Mark Riley, like people who are both great competitors and specified in horror, as we've seen previously, going out. Say it again.
Well, Perry Israel as well. Drew, video Drew as well. Only lasted 1 round.
Yep.
Yeah.
That was a shocker.
Rather insane. Ben, I'll go to you next for your opinion.
Yeah, I'm going to echo everything you guys said. Some deep cuts, surprising that there's some people didn't make it out more than maybe 1 or 2 rounds. Some people didn't impress me. Without saying who, because I don't think we will get there yet, but somebody's return did make me happy. Not going to say who, but yeah, it's very surprising and very, very deep cut questions, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's a weird, and I'll go to Kevin after this. It's a weird kind of deep cut, because I don't even think the questions were all that deep cut. It was the films they were going to.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I never thought I'd hear a Hellraiser 3 question get asked. And like, that's the type of, that's the movies they're going to. Kevin, I'll go to you next for your opinion before we move on.
Yeah, actually, I agree with Ben. I mean, these were some questions that you almost like you would hear in the fan leagues. That they were some deep cuts that you just don't hear really in the Schmoedown. So I think a lot of these guys maybe just weren't prepared for that deep of cuts. But if you look at like the winners of the eliminated of the rounds, like Vinny and Paul were the winners of the first 2 rounds. It was always like a set of people. There weren't a lot of like table clears, especially early on. And I'm sure you'll get to this later on, but until a certain person comes along. But yeah, it was a pretty even matchup going in. But I think Paul held his own. I agree with Soda down there that he did pretty well. I was impressed by his breadth of knowledge in what questions he answered right.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I mean, let's get to some of those people, because then following these initial guys who did solid considering how some of the rest of the competition did, we got our 3 heavy hitters. Obviously, the champ Adam Collins was introduced. He entered 6th. He won it, went 11 rounds and scored 52 points. He was shortly after joined by Whitney Seibold, who entered 10th. He left 15th after going 7 rounds for 22 points. And then the MVP, barely eking it out past Whitney. I never realized how close they actually were. Mark Hoyk enters 13th, exits 17th. He also lasts 7 rounds, but scores 31 points. So 9 points separate the difference between the MVP and Whitney Seibold. Matt, I'll go to you first on this one. What were your kind of thoughts on it?
Honestly, after my friend Lou, who's also on the Schmoes of the North, he knows Whitney a little bit, and from hearing about their conversations, I'm actually not surprised Whitney actually lasted as long as he did, because this dude likes some deep cut stuff. He's in the same vein as a William Bibiani in that sense, so I'm not surprised that he lasted that long. Same with Mark Edward Hoyk. I mentioned it in a chat I was having this past weekend for the most recent free-for-all, that this is the type of match that Mark Edward Hoyk is built for, because this is where he comes from. This is kind of like what the BPE format was. So I'm not surprised that he made it as far as he did as well. It could have been a pick 'em, but yeah, you were right. He barely eked his way out of being eliminated.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially towards the end there, it was really getting tight with the competitors.
And I do want to give a shout out to him for actually doing the whole free for all in a fucking restaurant.
Yeah, that is fair. That
shout out to him.
I don't know, like that looked like a Starbucks or something. I don't know what he was sitting outside of, but kudos to him for doing it, and kudos to them for not questioning why a dude that looks like that with the beard and the hair is sitting there answering horror questions. Yeah, Ben, I'll go to you next, man. What were your thoughts on kind of the 3 heavy hitters?
I mean, they were great. I think even the first time we saw, I don't want to say a weakness, but we saw there was a crack in Adam Collins, but again, very surprising. I had fun with all three of them. Whitney was great, Mark was great, and Adam is Adam. Is there nothing he doesn't know at this point? I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, Kevin, I'll go on to you next.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. Adam is just Adam. He is unbelievable. He's a walking encyclopedia. But I will say this in that I think it's an awesome thing having talked to Adam, knowing going into Schmoedown that his dream matchups were Mark Edward Hoyk and Whitney Seibold. Those were people that he really wanted to play and really wanted to, go up against. I'm happy for him that he got to, at least get there, at least get to go up against them in this format, and defeat them. So I'm proud of him for that. But yeah, that's he just dominated. That was he cleared tables. He did what had to be done.
Yeah, and I think, and I'll go to Alan next. I mean, and Collins wasn't the first one we've seen do it over the last few years, kind of what we've been talking about on our Flashback series that we've been doing, especially starting with Irwin in season 5. Periodically there are rookies that run through the table, but Adams might have been the most impressive simply because there wasn't anything that got thrown to him that fazed him, including an entire specialized free-for-all, which I don't think he'd even had horror questions really by the time he took this on. So it's not like anyone would have expected him to do well, unless maybe he spun it off into the fan leagues. And if you're somebody that really paroles the fan leagues, maybe you could have seen it coming. But I know a majority of the people watching it live did not see this coming. Alan, I'll go to you for your thoughts.
Yeah, I definitely didn't see it coming. He just, his breadth of knowledge is just amazing in every genre. He is a walking encyclopedia. It's kind of amazing. Yeah, it didn't surprise me. The other guys didn't surprise me at all because I expected that from them, especially the deep cut films they were going for, because Seibold and Hook, they really know the deep, obscure stuff. I mean, they've had reviews, shows, and things based off of those kind of things. And to reclaim a little bit of Paul love. I mean, I love me some Paul, but I put Paul in the same category as these guys, So that's why, for me, Paul, even though he did well, but he didn't last as many rounds as these other guys, because I put him in the same echelon as these other ones. He has a lot of knowledge and that kind of thing. So not to take away what he did, but, he could do more. He could do more. I think it really didn't shock me after this what Adam Collins did later on, because we didn't know too much about him. But then this kind of opened a lot of people's eyes going, oh, wow, this kid is no joke. He's for real. And it doesn't surprise me at all what he goes on to do later in the regular league.
Yeah, because this would have been towards the start of his run. So as we kind of move towards it, like I said, this is one of the shorter ones. It'd be remiss, since I'm specifically highlighting everyone who made it past one round. You got to bring up JTE. Came in last, second year in a row. Second year in a row in the free for all. They chucked him in at the end to see what he could do. He comes in 18th. He's eliminated 16th last 2 rounds. Gets a total of 6 points. But I feel like in addition to JTE, and I'll go to you first, Ben, the discussion around this was definitely not even who was there, but more so that Bibbs wasn't. I think the question is, as having seen the entirety of the event, do you think this is something that Bibbs would have won?
Okay, first of all, yes, absolutely. I think Bibbs is the free fall. When you think of Bibbs, you think of him standing and just dominating. Without spoiling this last one, he's great. But if I may, could I just touch on JTE real quick? It was such a surprise to see him come back, Yeah, nobody, I don't think at this time anybody saw that coming. Because he moved away, he was gone. It was so nice to see him who helped FIFA come back from this whole FIFA. So really, maybe they put him in more managers' position to really, okay, maybe he could get drafted again this year. And I think it really helped because now he is drafted to the tennis teams. And I think we have a whole people who think for it, personally.
Yeah, absolutely. Kevin, go ahead and follow up on that with your thoughts.
Yeah, I think it definitely excited some people to see him back just in the realm of the Schmoedown. It got people talking, and I think it did lead to him, getting brought back. But maybe that was being talked about before, maybe not. I don't know. I think there has to be that aspect of it, of even seen in a recent free for all. But yeah, I like those the surprise entries. I like when they do well, and in this free for all, you can say that was as well as anybody else did. So that's as good of a performance as anybody else put up. So you got to give him props. You got to give JT props on that for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. To Alan.
Yeah, it's always good to see JTE, man. There's a whole rule named after the man. He's a legend in the game. It's always good to see him, man. And I love it when they do these free for alls, surprise people that come in and go, oh yeah, that's right. So it's always good to see that kind of thing. And going back to Bibbs, I think Bibbs would have did well, but I still think Collins would have taken the thing, or I think it would have been between those two. Maybe till the bitter end, because Bibbs has got a deep knowledge base in horror, especially. He's got a deep knowledge base, but I've seen him in matches before in horror categories get tripped up by certain ones, and I like to think like me, appearing in a horror match recently, but maybe somebody here was hosting, I don't know who. Well, pulling some movies that were, people forget about those because no, why would we even think about that? Darkness Falls, come on. Come on, man, the Tooth Fairy, you kidding me? But I think Bibbs would have did well because he always does, but I think Collins would have probably taken it at the end anyway.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment. And Matt, I'll go to you.
I'm on the flip side. I think Bibbs would have taken it, but I also do think that if Bibbs was in the free-for-all, they'd still be playing right now. To be perfectly honest. And when it comes to JTE, yeah, maybe him appearing in here and making it to the final three might have helped a little bit, but honestly, because of everything that Spaceman there said about JTE being a legend or whatever, he would have been drafted no matter what. If he just said, look, I'm committed to this, I will be playing, he would have been drafted no matter what because he is a legend of the game. So I don't think his performance here had as big of an effect on him getting drafted as people might think.
Yeah, and it's even been said as much publicly. The only reason JTE didn't play last year is because when they put Ken in charge of the Droogs, they never actually told him what his full roster is. So he just simply wasn't aware that JTE was on it till somebody said, why don't you use JTE for something?
Yeah.
That's right.
And there was
like,
two last year as well, which is another reason why he was drafted. That never
happened. That's why Roxy drafted him and got rid of him then, because they weren't going to Boston. Yeah, absolutely. So with that, guys, I'm going to go around one more time and give you a chance to say anything you didn't get a chance to say, starting with Kevin. But we're going to get ready to wrap this up. So final thoughts.
No, this was an awesome little free for all that they put together. I say little. I know any free for all, especially in the digital age, is a struggle to put together. So I give them props for sure. But yeah, it was a fun one to watch. I like the specialized aspect of it, and I would like to see more of these in the future. The specialized versions. Maybe a geek version, maybe a even going more specialized than that, Star Wars, something like that. But definitely proud of Adam, and the other guys did great as well, Mark and Whitney and everybody else.
God forbid if they did a Star Wars free-for-all, they'd still be there in 2 years. God forbid if that Dragon Con would have to actually
four
release.
riders. I know. Yeah.
They'd be playing, the Dragon Con players would be playing Dragon Con while doing the Schmoedown free-for-all. They'd be looking back and forth. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it'd be insane. Alan, final thoughts on it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I didn't expect it at all. And I'm a subscriber, not a subscriber, but a Patreon, patron. And when it popped up, I went, "Oh, this is perfect! Fantastic! I love the horror genre, and I love to see everybody's knowledge. And I'm always looking for questions, and try to test my own skills while watching it. So a lot of fun, love it, and I hope they do more."
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, final thoughts.
Yeah, I'm with Faceman here. I would love it if they did more specialized free-for-alls, but this was also a good beta test because obviously it's a route that they didn't know if they could take. And if this hadn't gone off as well as it did, I honestly don't think we would have the free-for-all this year. I think it would again to go to the live crowd. So I'm glad everything went off. It was nice to see who was in it because some of them, obviously they're going to be in it, like a Hoyt, like a JTE, or in Riley and all those guys. But then it was nice to see some other people you might not expect pop in there. So I mean, it was a good match, and a very easily digestible match too as well, coming in at under 2 hours. So yeah, it was a great exhibition. Well, not exactly exhibition because it had the points value added on it, but it was a great demonstration to see. Yes, we could actually take this and do it properly next year.
Yeah, and it should be worth mentioning because as we've done with the other ones, we talked about the prizes. The prizes with this were a little more reduced compared to the others. There's not as much to talk about. Except for the fact that because Adam won it and Hoyk was MVP, a total of, I believe, 4 points were added to Corruption's total, which is just 4 more free points to widen that gap that led to their eventual victory. So then, Ben, I'll go to you. Final thoughts on the video.
It was a great people. I'm going to echo everything. Yeah, give me more genre-specific people, and I have one. A holiday movie free-for-all. Any Christmas movie for them. That would be so much fun. And yes, I'm going to include Die Hard.
Absolutely. Guys, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Kevin, Alan, Ben, Matt, Majo, saying it correctly. I did get it on camera. But as with all our other panelists, it's time to move on, and I lose all respect. So you guys are out of here. Bye-bye. We will see you later. Good plug, Kevin. That was a good try. But guys, that is it for the horror free-for-all. But that's not the last free-for-all because just the other week, we had one this year happen. The big event went down, and I think it's time we finally got to it, right? Let's stop talking about the past. Let's talk about the present. Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. We have made it after going through the first free-for-all, the second free-for-all, the third free-for-all, and the horror free-for-all. We have made it to the fourth and final free-for-all of this video and the most recent free-for-all. Now, while the free-for-all at this point has been out over a week, if you have not had a chance to see it and don't want to be spoiled, this is the point where you should click out of the video, as the remainder of the video will be spoiling the 4th free-for-all that happened on April. So please be sure to tune out, come back once you've finished it. But with that said, let's go ahead and intro our panelists for this one. Introducing first, he is a returning SchmoeTalks guest. I am happy to have him back. He is one big corruption fan, and they had a moment on this one. He is Andy Sweet. Coming in, and joining him on screen, making his SchmoeTalks debut. He is a Schmoedown fan that is new to the fan leagues and getting in with the fan community, just like Andy was when he first came on the show, and I'm happy to have him here. Mr. Jake Reese joins us on the show as well. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Oh, fantastic. I'm ready to talk about this. I just rewatched it again today, so it should be fun.
The same here. Fantastic event. Lots to talk about. Thank you for having.
Absolutely, guys. So let's get into this. So, obviously, as we did with the other ones, I have pulled out some easily the best competitive performances of this. We'll go through it in the chunks. So let's get into the first couple of ones. And I mean, right out the gate, for what I think might be, no, this is the second time this is happening, because it happened with the third one as well. 2 of the first 5 people out went on a tear at the start of the event. Mr. Ethan Irwin, first person on the table. He is the 5th person eliminated, lasting 4 rounds and scoring 18 points, which, when you obviously seen the names of everybody else involved, is considered a tear. Mr. William, go to the end, Bibiani did not make it all the way to the end, but he does come in 16th place, entering 5th. He lasts 10 rounds for 42 points. And then shortly after they were brought to the table, 2 more star-studded players came out. Rookie Griffey Nooms, as he calls himself, enters 11th. He finishes 18th, lasting 6 rounds for 24 points. And Mr. Mark Edward Hoyk, who did himself a good job during the horror free-for-all as well, makes his second appearance. He comes out 13th. He ends up leaving 14th, which doesn't seem like much, but he lasts 4 rounds to score 15 points. So I'll go ahead and go to Jake first. What were your thoughts on these opening competitors and the opening rounds? What kind of stood out to you about it? You're still muted.
Whoopsie.
Everybody does it. The competitors did it, so you're good. Go ahead.
Yay. Just from the beginning, what a panel to start off with. I mean, from the intro, Bibbs, hey, I pulled number 1. Grace, can you help me out? And Grace, because she's such a nice person, of course, agrees to help William out, and then does not. So fantastic scene just to lead in. But yeah, fantastic beginning. Yeah, that's all I have to say on that topic.
Yeah, Andy, what stood out to you about some of the opening rounds?
I mean, I think we saw a lot of former champs right in that first match there. I mean, we had Collins, and I mean, at one point we had Irwin, Collins, and Bibiani, 3 of the more current title contenders. Obviously, minus Dan Murrell, who would come into play later. But, I mean, you had a lot of big hitters. Barbarian was in there. He had kind of a pretty good showing.
And I have it here. In the first 10 slots, Irwin, Bibiani, Collins, and Draco, and Dan Murrell are all belt holders or have held belts. So 5 of the 10. It was pretty top-heavy there in the first 10. Just the weird. I have to imagine that was a luck of the draw thing and not pre-planned. I don't think you want that many big hitters going out at the start by plan, but the luck of the draw certainly played out.
Yeah, and then you would obviously hope they would all go on a tear, and we obviously know what would happen with Bibiani clearing.
Yeah, and we can get into that We got so I believe if I remember correctly, because it didn't stand out to me with the others. Obviously, we talked about earlier in the episode, the very first event had the XX5XX, and since then we've had like table clears and stuff, but we've never had a 5XXXX that I can think of or anything of that equivalent. This match we got 2. Bibiani does it against, and if I remember correctly, it was Erwin, Collins, and Draco and Dan, I believe, were the 4 that he did it against. Yes. Which, if I'm correct, those are actually the 5 belt holders I just called out. So yeah, Bibiani clears a table full of belts in one fell swoop.
Doing what Bibiani does.
Yeah, and this one is the XXXX5. I have to remember how many X's there were.
How many questions can one ask where Merlin Collins don't get it for one? And then on top of that, Android and Erwin don't get it either.
Yeah. And
how many questions?
The faces of them, like when Bibiani turns it and gets it, and everyone's just like, I don't know. It was that was a rather interesting one.
It's kind of surprising because I feel like Bumblebee was kind of a bigger movie that did fairly well. You figure, and it was fresher, newer, so you figure that would maybe still be in their brains, but just.
Yeah,
nope.
and like I also think honestly part of the trick of it was also the sport that it was, because like I've seen Bumblebee once, maybe twice, and like my first thought was like, I don't know, weren't they at a baseball field at one point? I was trying to think of points in the movie where they might have been somewhere where a sport could be played. Like at no point did diving ever hit my mind, and then I think that's what it was, right? Diving. And then when they said it, I was like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that. But like that is a detail right there to try and get you on. And apparently only Bibbs paid that much attention to Bumblebee.
Yeah, I will say props to the writers. They had a good mixture of questions this time. I mean, there were some that were really good.
Yeah, they did. They did a good job of really mixing in, get a series of like, gettable 1-round questions in a row, and just that odd 2-3 that, which is funny because I don't think there were any ridiculous 5-pointers in this event, but it does show how much harder a 2 or 3 level is when you don't have the crutches, whether it's a repeat or the multiple choice, or when you take those crutches away from them and you just got to get it 15 on the board. It really is rather interesting to see what some players react and can't react to. And then I want to talk about Griffin Newman for a second, because this dude, he looked good in his first match. That's Hoyt, I misclicked. But Griffin, he looked good in his first match. And he comes out here, and until another thing we'll talk about in a minute happens, he looked like he was going to be the one who might go on a tear, because not only was he consistently getting 4 or 5, dude was looking confident the entire time.
Yeah,
like,
he did not look anything. Those big lights or any of those big names around him, he just did not seem to care. He was locked in and he was answering those questions.
Yeah, like he is, especially considering well, I mean, if you want to talk about lights, that pink hat he's wearing was brighter than anything. But like even the ones he missed, it wasn't like, and we'll get to Jeff in a bit later, but this was one of those performances with Jeff where like once he got a string of things he didn't know, it beat him up. He beat himself up again. Whereas anytime this guy missed a question, it was just like, I don't fucking know it. Shit. What is the answer? Like,
yeah, which is just played it into his character almost.
Yeah, which is considering very good character work on his part. So let's go ahead and move on and introduce the next couple players, and then obviously that introduces one of the big things. So this free-for-all, obviously they hand out awards at the end. We got the MVP, we got the champion, obviously, but they started a new one with this one, which was moment of the match. So this was an award for a separate player who they believe held the moment of the match, and that went to rookie Jacob London, who entered 20th. He was eliminated 23rd, lasting 4 rounds for 15 points. For those keeping count, that means he equaled Mark Hoyt's stats basically to the T. But he comes in on his first round and does another sweeper. And in that one, let me see if I have the names right. It was Bibiani, Griffin Newman, Liz Shannon Miller, and the rookie that just beat him, Jacoby Bancroft, all taken out of the table on what was a question that I don't know why, but that movie's so the moment they said it, I instantly went 1988 because one, but whatever, my Wikipedia memory, I'm freakishly good with release dates, but also when I discovered this movie for the first time, I didn't realize that Dirty Harry was a series. So I just remember stumbling across this movie because somebody mentioned it and I looked it up and it said 5th film in the Dirty Harry series. And I just went, they had 5 of these?
Yeah, that's a lot. Wow.
This was back in the day where movies like Dirty Harry and Jaws could get franchises and just nobody pays attention to the fact that they exist, you know? I didn't know Jaws, like I knew Jaws the Revenge existed. For the longest time I thought that was a 2nd film. I didn't know it was the 4th film in that series. Like it's incredible how many movies some of these franchises got. And so if something immediately clicked and I was like 1988. And then to this one, I think this won the moment over Bibbs because with Bibbs, he went first. I think it lines up perfectly that Jacob was the last person to go because it's so close, so close, so close, so close, dead on. And then it clicks like, oh, shit, what have I just done? So before I pass it over to you, Andy, I'll intro the others that we can talk about here. Jeff Snyder, not doing as well as with Free For All 3, but putting in a decent performance. 23rd entered, eliminated 26th. He lasts 4 rounds for 12 points. And then, of course, the MVP enters at this point. Ben Bateman comes in 24th, is eliminated 40th. He lasts 14 rounds for 52 points and wins the MVP award by way of statistically, he didn't put up the best performance. It was simply because he hung in that much longer than anybody else on the table. The closest would have been Bibbs at 10 rounds, and that was still 4 rounds less. So this was simply he just hung in way more than anybody else did. And again, another talking point, if one of you wants to bring it up, because I've seen the debates already just in the days since it happened of did he deserve it, and people going back and forth and arguing, well, people who lasted less than him got more 4 or 5 rounders, so were they more deserving of it than him? So I'll go to Andy first. Just anything with those 3 players that you want to bring up and talk about. I know you're a Corruption fan, so I'm sure that moment must have.
I mean, that was a nice moment to see. Actually, I feel like we did pretty well. Corruption did pretty well. I mean, as far as performance-wise, obviously match-wise, we've been getting the short end of the stick. Just that 5-pointer seems to be there, but that's a talk for another show. I actually kind of want to focus on that Ben Bateman thing, or I guess the MVP. So, I mean, he hung in there. He played it smart. I think he got to that point where all he needed to do was, I'm probably not going to win this, but I can get my faction 3 points. And, I think he's always been that guy who's looked at the game a little bit different early on, kind of wants his faction thing. So I think he was looking at it more of a point of, I don't need to play the best. I just need to play well enough to get those 3 points. And so I think he just decided I need to last the longest. Maybe if I don't win it, if I last the longest, I'll get those 3 points.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, and we'll bring up the prizes at the end, obviously, but there is that kind of central debate around what really was the better prize, because Oyama gets a title shot, but if that doesn't go his way, then that means Swag have got nothing from this, whereas the Dungeon, who are already taking a considerable lead, have now walked away with a guaranteed 3 more points. Jake, I'll go to you for your opinions on these section of players.
So I'm a Quirky Merc Shazam fan. Bibbs is probably my favorite player playing right now, so I admit I am a little biased. So once Bibbs went out, I was like, he's for sure the MVP. But then Ben came in and did what he did. Interestingly enough, that 5th seat was only occupied by 2 players the whole game, Bibbs and Ben. And yeah, I have to give it to Ben. And I'm a fan of that guy too, so. I mean, I'm a fan of everybody, but. So. And then I will say, for me, the Bibbs moment was heavier just because of who he did it to. Doing that to Dan and Adam.
Oh, true.
And then, so I would have given the moment there, but I do have to cede the MVP fairly to Ben.
I feel like they're trying to steer it kind of in a way of focus on the new blood a little bit. So you give that moment of the year to a rookie. Yeah. Obviously the winner, that's for the end of the video, but someone who's never won it before, someone who I think was deserving of it, that's good for him,
it was one of those 2 moments for sure. I mean, XX5, X5, XXXX5. without deserving that praise.
Yeah, absolutely. So and then obviously, you know, we can talk about the other two and their good moments till the end, but I mean, it is kind of worth bringing up Jeff. Like, he's such a weird player, man. Like, he was playing.
Once he gets in his head, he's done. He's done.
He was playing so well for a bit there, and then he misses like 2 questions, and again, it's that same like he scraped through a round on like 2 points, and then played the round he was eliminated on with just that I'm done. I don't care.
Yeah, it's always so brutal to watch.
Yeah, it's it's rather interesting, man. It sucks. It sucks to see that happen.
Especially for a guy who's been around as long as he has. You know, you figure most of these players have learned to kind of hone their emotions and keep it inside. But Jeff's that guy. We've seen it on camera many a times. The infamous Bibiani match, you know, where he got 70. I mean, you saw a man just, I don't care anymore. I don't care. And it sucks because he could be a champ. You know, he could hold that singles belt if he wanted to, but probably he'll never get it.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because I think it is just a mental obstacle with him. Like this, to speak out of the free for all for a second, because I think it's like the number is like he's like 0 for 5 in singles #1 contenders matches, and that's counting the tournament final last year. Like, he can get there, he just can't get any further. And well, he's not 0 for 5. That's incorrect. He won 1, but he beat himself up against Oyama in the title match and still couldn't win it.
And so Oyama was giving him that match too. I mean, Oyama gave him that match and he still lost it.
Yeah. So you know, it's a thing of like, he's in terms of title matches and #1 contenders matches. It's like he's like a 1 for 5, 1 for 6. Like the only one he's ever won was the one against Kalinowski. And you could even argue there's a bit of a caveat there because I'm pretty sure that was the one where Kalinowski had to play 2 matches in a row. Like he just played Bateman and then had to come out and play Schneider.
Yep.
So it's like, you know, it sucks that it is that way, but it is what it is. And while we're here, we'll take this second to introduce the ever so fashionably late man who runs the channel. It's the only reason I'm doing this, because I need to keep my show. Mr. Matt Beer joins us on camera.
Hi, yeah. See, that's the great thing about third shift is that you oversleep every day. So you pretty much miss the entire day.
Well, I'm glad you're able to wake up somewhat. Matt, welcome to the show. Welcome back once again. So let's get into this. I'll let you go ahead before we get into our final set of competitors. We've already run through, as I'll pull them up on screen again, the first few competitors that really performed in this event. Out of the early kind of first 2/3 of the event, what really stood out to you in terms of the performances, what players, what moments, before we moved into the end of this?
I think the person that stood out to me the most was Jacob London. And I know a lot of people say Bibiani, but he does this every year. He goes as far, you know, as he does every year. He'll start first and he'll get to the final round. So, you know, that, you know, wasn't really surprised that he got as far as he did. The surprising thing was that he didn't go even further. But yeah, Jacob, I know Jacob is good at trivia, but I didn't know he was as good as he was to where he could like get as far as he did, going up against some real titans in the SchmoeTalks.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, as we said earlier, to know the release date of those films, because it's not like they paired 2 films together. Because like, and I will say, I noticed a couple of those during the free for all, where if you think about it, one of these is a gimme, right? Like I remember there was a release date question where it was like, in what year was there a Toy Story, Star Wars film? There was one other franchise, and then it was The Matrix, a James Bond film and a Matrix film. And immediately once I heard that, I went, well, The Matrix technically only has 2 release years, 99 and 03. So which ones line up? and then my second thing was Toy Story had 95 and then 2010. And the other one, I knew the other one was in the 90s. So I was like, it's got to be 99 because Phantom Menace, 99, and then James Bond has one like every other year except for COVID. So who cares? So yeah, it's one of those things. Yeah, I mean, it was certainly an impressive performance from Jacob. Another person, man, and I've talked about it on the show before, I know Matt as well does as well. I know a lot of the guys from the fan leagues who have gone into this, and Jacob's another one who I've had the pleasure of being around a number of times. Super nice dude. Super happy to see him come back because he kind of stepped away for a while just because of all the sourness that happens from time to time amongst people. And I'm super glad to see him back and just enjoying it. And especially coming off of what was an unfortunate loss, but a solid performance in his debut, that's the way to get one up and show, yeah, no, just because I lost doesn't mean anything. So yeah, let's go ahead and get into the final set of competitors then. So with this match, just based off of how people were performing, I set the mark at 4 rounds to make them noticeable, but I pulled 2 out at the end here who did a little less because they're worth mentioning. The first was Kim Taylor Foster, and I put that note at the bottom there. Statistically, she is, by a mile, the best performance by a debutant in the free-for-all ever. Only a handful of players have ever actually made their debut in the free-for-all. Out of, I think it's like 7 or 8 players, only 3 of them have ever made it past 1 round. The other 2 players were Johnny LaQuasto, of all people, because it's the only match he ever played, and Paul Preston, actually. And they scored way less points in 2 rounds than she did in even her first 2. So statistically, she is above and beyond the best person. Then Mr. Paul Oyama, the winner of it all, came in, enters 30-30. He's not eliminated at all. He wins it, lasting 9 rounds and scoring 41 points. Paul Preston put up a solid performance at the end, enters 35th. He's eliminated 36th, lasting 5 rounds for 18 points. And then, again, it's a case of statistics because even out of all the people who played 3 rounds, by a good margin, she earned more points than them. Jen Kemp enters 39th, is eliminated 39th, but in 3 rounds earns 14 points. She also came first place in what was the first and only sudden death of the event outside of the final 2. So it's worth mentioning there. Matt, I'll go to you on this one first. Which of these kind of final performances stood out to you?
I think Jen did, because I know Jen is, she's really good at trivia, but going as far as she did, being able to go to sudden death, making it, like I believe, was it the final 3? Yep. I think that was very impressive on her front, because she was going up against 2, incredible players, 2 of the best maybe ever. And for doing as well as she did against them, I think that's very impressive, even though, maybe she entered 39th and didn't go as far as like a Bibiani or, Blunden or any of these people. Still doing what she did, I thought was very impressive.
Yeah. And considering the last time we had somebody enter that late in the game and probably perform as well as she did was Sam Levine. And, as I talked about earlier in the episode, Levine entered, I can't remember how many there were. There was less players, but he entered second to last. He cleared who was at the table at that moment, and then, by happenstance, and then had to go against Dagnino one-on-one, which is almost like handing you the title. Jake, I'll go to you with these last set of players. What stands out to you?
Shout out Mara and Ben for putting that table on the field for the dungeon. Just to get there.
Yep, they cleared the other 3.
Was a pretty good moment. Paul Preston's wig must definitely be discussed. Does not appear, not appearing in this picture, but
no.
That was impressive. And yeah, just what a great setup. Jen Kemp, very impressive. She scores 6 points in that overtime round to, I believe, 5 and 4 from her other competitors to go to the finals. But always glad when Ben Bateman gets to hit a 2-4-6-0-1. Everybody loves that. And I do wonder if just Bear would have been an acceptable answer for that finale, or did they need Polar Bear?
With this whole, and this is a whole nother debate that you could probably spend a whole episode on, but with this whole benefit of the doubt rule they've put in place, recently, we had and I won't spoil it in case somebody hasn't seen it yet, because it is still less than a week since it went up, but the Robert Parker, Brandon Hanna match, there was more than one moment in that match where there were definitely some answers where it's like, benefit of the doubt, sure, but how correct is it actually? So yeah,
I feel like when if it's a species, I feel like it would have to be polar bear. It can't just be bear, because wasn't there that whole thing Roca last year at the free for all? Remember, it was dogs and the diamonds incident, and it had to be a little more specific. So I don't know if you could get away with just bear.
True, but I mean, yeah, potentially. It would have been interesting to see if he'd gone there, because I certainly think Winston would have been screaming off screen if they did. Andy, what were your thoughts on this kind of last couple of rounds and Oyama taking the victory?
Well, I think the piggyback with that Jen Kim thing, well, not only to do what she did, but to come in that late against people who are kind of already in a zone. I mean, Ben Bateman and Paul Oyama were on fire. Then her to come in there fresh and to match that, and then to go to the final three, definitely impressive. But yeah, I mean, Paul, I think he wanted it. He's hungry. He's got that edge back, but with this new frame of mind, obviously with Winston. So it's going to be fun. Let's get him and Merle again in that ring. That'll be fun to watch. And that last question, that was a lot of fun to watch too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say one thing that stood out to me that I thought was rather funny is I've never seen Ben's way of messing with people get that deep into someone's head in a way that doesn't actually seem to affect him, because you could tell he was in Oyama's head to the point where Oyama literally word for word said exactly what he would say with him, like I wrote and he gets the correct answer. And I think it wound up making for a better moment when he won, because Oyama was just in his headspace of like, look, I know I'm going to get it right, but this asshole's also going to get it right. So we're just going to have to keep going. Yeah. And I think it made for a great moment there. But yeah, it's funny. It shows how good Ben is at it, but I've never seen it work that way with someone. Usually they just start getting really pissed off at him. Whereas with this, it was almost like it was helping him in some weird way. It was entertaining, to say the least.
I feel like it's something they may have actually practiced for. Like with Paul,
I think
maybe in team sessions,
doing that too.
Have Chandru talk a little bit of trash to him while he's playing, because we know Chandru likes to talk trash, and see how he does under that pressure, or of just internalizing and saying, "Cool, I'm better than you, motherfucker. I'm going to beat you."
See, I forgot for a second that factions were the same, and I imagined just Bateman and Oyama sitting in a call just fucking mimicking each other. That would also be entertaining.
Yes,
yeah,
definitely.
So obviously, let's briefly talk about, before we end this whole thing, let's talk about the prizes, because obviously we talked about it with all of them. So Paul Oyama, for being the champion, walks out with, as always with the other free-for-alls, the title shot. He can use the title shot in any scenario. He can use it for singles, IG, God bless him, Star Wars if he wants to, or he can use it with Lon for teams. One of the interesting things with this prize, and obviously aside from becoming a champ if you win, there is the 7 points on the table to help your faction out if you win, and then obviously even more for defending. There's a really interesting thing with this, and I'll come back to, just because I want to get to the others real quick. As I said earlier, Bateman, for winning MVP, gets 3 automatic points to the dungeon, meaning their lead is stretched even further. And Mr. Blunden got absolutely nothing except recognition for the melon of the match. Corruption probably could have used a pity point there, but it is what it is. He will just have that personal pride in his back pocket for the remainder of the year. But yeah, this title shot. So somebody brought something interesting up after the show, and I forget where I heard it, if it was like talking to someone or if I heard it on a show. But there was a point brought up where, apparently, and I missed this, but apparently Christian said he can hold on to it for as long as he wants, even if that means he goes into the next season, which in the past, there's been an expiration date on it, which is the end of the season. Now it seems like he can go into the next season and still hold on to it, which I think is rather interesting. But there's also the point that somebody brought up of, if Oyama wants to, and if he's allowed, because scheduling, I don't know if they could work this. If he wants to challenge at Spectacular, does it become worth the extra points that those matches are worth because he's held on to it? Or if he's feeling even more confident in himself, does he challenge right before Spectacular, win it, and then try to go, I think it's like 15 points or something if you defend at Spectacular, and use that as like a Hail Mary boost to their points. Now, obviously, if he wins and then does that, that's a 22-point swing right there for swag. So you got to be feeling fucking confident about yourself to try and pull that one off. But it is an interesting question of basically what's the clericalness of this, because every single time we've seen it used, we know it's been a scheduling thing, even though, and they've admitted as such, the one time that it seemed like it was used off the cuff with Levine was pre-scheduled. No matter who won that match, he was going to walk in and do that as a part of the event. It wasn't just like everybody was packing up and then he showed up and said, nah, let's do this. So it is an interesting question of when he decides to cash in, how does that play into it, and what would be the best strategy? I'll give everyone a chance to speak on that before we wrap up. Matt.
Well, drop my headphones, but I think he's going to use it before Spectacular. That's just kind of the feeling I get. I think it also depends what position swag is as far as the rankings too, because if they get to a point to where they really need those 22 points, I think he'll use it for sure right before it, because for one, he knows he can win a title. He's done it before. I'm pretty sure he's confident enough where he can do it. And plus, I mean, like I said, so actually, has he ever won a team's championship?
No.
He has not. No.
So I could see him maybe using it in that scenario too. Maybe he uses it right before, and then that way they can win it there and then defend it Spectacular. Or he might just wait till Spectacular and use it for teams, because, once you get to a certain point, you start thinking, okay, how can I add enough championships to get to a point to where I can be considered among the top 3, top 2, or even the greatest to do it? So he has the knowledge to do it. He knows it. So I could potentially see him doing that. That way he can be like, look, I've won multiple championships in multiple leagues. There you go. So, but I do think either way, it's more than likely going to be before Spectacular.
Absolutely. Jake?
Where is Final Exam right now? They're not in the tournament.
No, they weren't put in the tournament because they had the match for number 1 contenders. They didn't win. Okay. Yeah, so right now they're just kind of in the ranks waiting for a match.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, if I'm Paul and Swag, I keep it in the back pocket, see how this Star Wars situation goes, see how this team situation goes. And then, yeah, probably around that August-ish time, September, when it shapes out a little more, then we'll probably find out more, I think.
Makes sense. Andy?
Yeah, I'd say it's about, once tournament season's done, we got a lot of tournaments coming up, kind of see how the tree shakes out after that, where they're sitting. But, Paul's in a great place right now. He's holding all the chips right now. We know he can do it, and we know he's hungry. So it's just a matter of, I think, finding that perfect time to use that. And maybe, hey, with Christian in the back, maybe they'll try something storyline wise too, with, like I said, before the Spectacular, and have someone, because I don't think anyone since Dan Murrell and Paulo Yama are the last 2 people to defend that belt. So otherwise that belt kind of just seems to move around a lot if it's not on one of those 2 shoulders.
Yeah, honestly, that seems pretty correct, actually. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does with it. But guys, thank you so much. That will be what it is with Spectacular 4. Jake, Andy, I appreciate both of you guys coming on here. Jake, thank you for coming on for your first time. I look forward to having you back again in the future. And now, like I do with all of my guests, I'm going to show you the sweet appreciation of booting you to the back abruptly. Thank you. All right, I'm one-on-one with you, Matt. We're coming to the end of the episode, and I'm going to spring something on you, because for the people who have been paying attention, they are aware of the fact that you have won a previous competition that we're doing. In the current, we are working on another competition, which is the bracket submission competition. So hopefully you guys are able to get your brackets in time and be on the run for that. But Mr. Beer, you won that first competition off of sheer luck and guessing, which was incredible. You're muted right now. I can't hear a thing you're saying.
There we go. I have no idea how I won that.
And so because of that, you chose as your prize to pick a topic for an upcoming SchmoeTalks. Now, when this will be dated, I do not know, but it will be in the near future. Mr. Beer, would you like to announce the topic that we will be spending an entire episode on, thanks to you?
Sure. So we're going to be talking about, and I was going to come up with some like funny little joke. I can't think of anything right now. That's what happens when you just wake up. But we're going to talk about underdog type of things, the upsets, right? So the whole Dan Murrell and Andrew Guy, those type of matchups. We're going to talk about that for a while. Have I picked out the matches that we'll talk about? No. Why? Because, don't have a lot of time, but I'll have those and we'll definitely have it ready for a future episode.
Absolutely. So I'll be looking forward to doing that in the near future. And Matt, you run the channel. You're the reason my show's not canceled. You're the reason your own show that's titled this is not canceled. So I will show you a bit more respect than my other guests, and I will instead boot you out. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our SchmoeTalks free-for-all reviews. Thank you so much to those of you who tuned in over the last 2 weeks to check out all 5 sections of our free-for-all review. Drop your opinions down in the comments. What did you think of what we had to say? Did you enjoy what we had to say? Did you enjoy the shows? Thank you so much for everybody involved. Speaking of thank yous, scrolling below, I'll be alternating between them as they finish up. I want to give a big shout out to everyone and everything that helped me put this together. The show literally went on a month-long hiatus so I could try and make this as fun a show as possible, and a lot of people went into making this episode pretty special. So to all the panelists I had with me over the course of these 2 episodes in alphabetical order: Jordan Anderson, Jacob Barber, Matt Beer, Hunter Chambliss, Matt Majot said correctly, Brian Nussbaum, Ryan Payne, Kevin Poss, Ben Rayner, Jake Reese, Colton Roberts, Alan Shepard, Nikki Sullivan, and Andy Sweet. Thank you to all of you guys for coming on, being a part of the panels, working with me with the filming and the ideas I had for this, because it was a lot of fun. Also, special thanks to David B., who was able to help me get access to being able to get the music for this show. Nothing too special. He just actually showed me literally where to go to get the music for the in memoriam segment, so that is much appreciated. Shout out to the people who update the Collider and the Schmoedown Wikia for both updated stats. That's how I was able to gather all the stats for the free-for-all and the ordering of how everything happened, as well as for a majority of the pictures for the contestants. Shout out as well for pictures to Google. Simply Googling people's names gives you a good result of pictures. A personal Instagram or two for people who were a little harder to find. It's very easy if you follow them on Instagram. And shout out to John Roca's old headshot for just simply existing, because that thing was incredible, and I am so glad I got the chance to use it for this. And most of all, the most important thank that I could give for this episode is to the one and only Greg Alba for pissing his pants. I didn't want to go through the actual free-for-alls and screenshot a lot of images because that's a lot of extra work, but goddamn if that wasn't worth watching that clip again to get that shot. But with that said, guys, thank you so much for checking out this episode. Please be sure to rate, comment, and subscribe, and stick around, as SchmoeTalks is not on the downside, it's on the upside. We have back to back for the future episodes coming to you guys beginning next week with the previously announced interview with Schmoedown writer and fan league legend Jeremy Adams. Once again, my name is Aaron Knoll, and we will see you guys next time on SchmoeTalks.